MTV is spring break, BET has spring bling, but for gridiron fans here stateside, all we want is spring ball, and that brings us to the United Football League, back for its second consecutive season. That is an accomplishment, a feat in and of itself. This weekend was opening weekend, and one that is usually among the biggest for the league in terms of visibility, both attendance and TV ratings wise. With that in mind, I want to take a look at the good, the bad, and the ugly from the first week of the UFL. No long, super self-indulgent intro from me this time around. Spring football is back, and I could not be happier, especially because there was no unnecessary opening game nonsense from The Rock. Look, I get Dwayne Johnson's star power is supposed to be a selling point for the league. I just don't know how much it's helped, all things considered. But enough about that. It's time to focus on what was happening during the UFL's first week. We start with the good, and for me, look no further than Manny Wilkins being back in professional football. If you've ever watched this channel before, you know I'm a West Coast Pac-12 guy, so seeing an Arizona State alum slinging the pigskin for the St. Louis Battlehawks, I was all for it. I know some are upset that St. Louis cut A.J. McCarron, and the way they did so was less than savory. Manny Wilkins didn't see much action in the world of professional football after leaving ASU. He spent some time in NFL training camp and then was gone from the professional football ranks until linking up with St. Louis in the then XFL ahead of the 2023 campaign. The passer did see some game time in 2024 while McCarron was hurt, but he's now stepping into the full-time role this year. For those who remember Wilkins from his college days, seeing him enter 2025 as QB1 for the Battlehawks was a sight to behold. His time at Arizona State was spectacular. He was a highlight reel, even if the Sun Devils didn't win a ton of games. I mean, they went bowling, but they weren't a powerhouse by any means. For those who don't remember Wilkins, he was with Arizona State in the late 2010s alongside Eno Benjamin, N'Keal Harry, and Kalen Ballage, who had himself a day over in Arlington. Luke Wilkins wasn't asked to do much on this day, and tougher tests will await him and St. Louis in the future, but I'm certainly rooting for him, especially for a self-proclaimed Pac-12 guy like myself. RIP to a real one. What else was good? Let's give a mention to the fearless play. There are a lot of players in the UFL who, when they step on that field, they go out there as if they have nothing to lose. Sure, some of it is recklessness. Some of it is probably why these guys aren't in the NFL, but it sure does make these games exciting. Case in point, look at Bryce Perkins. The quarterback took a botched snap and somehow scored a touchdown. He could have easily fallen on the ball. He could have just mitigated risk here, but he did not do that. He scooped up the ball and just put in a tremendous effort for the 6 points here. My favorite example of this fearlessness, that came from Kellen Mond during the Brahmas Renegades matchup, and a play that was ultimately meaningless, all things considered. 3rd and 26, nothing open downfield, and he takes off out of the pocket. Noticing that he's not even close to getting the first down, he, out of the corner of his eye, sees his teammate Jacob Harris out there. Crucially, Harris is behind Mond at this point in time, or at least level with him. The former Texas A&M Aggies quarterback says, "Screw it," and hurls the ball Harris's way. Sadly, the lateral clangs off his hands and out of bounds. Dangerous? You betcha, but had Harris caught the ball, as he should have caught the ball since it hit his hands, he gets the first down easily and maybe even scores a touchdown here. More importantly, this is what you want to see when you're watching a UFL game. Try stuff, be bold, especially if you're just going to lose by a ton of points anyway, as Mond, Harris, and the San Antonio Brahmas did on this day. Another good to come out of the opening weekend of the UFL, just a reminder of the great access and occasional F-bomb we get from broadcasts. The access fans get with the UFL is undoubtedly the best thing the league has going for it. From understanding how referee decisions are made to hearing coaches and players throughout the contest in an unfiltered, well, mostly unfiltered setting, it's just so awesome. However, it was a moment for Memphis offensive coordinator TJ Vanieri that really made my entire weekend. Here it is. Warning, there is some strong language.
Come on. 3rd and 6.
We got it. Make a play, Troy. Fuck.
That moment is so real. Anyone who has played or coached football at just about any level has been there, has been in Veneer's shoes. Give me more swearing, please. I know ESPN and the censors probably hate it, but it's just unfiltered, raw, and it is the essence of football. This is what football is at its core.
Make a play, Troy. Fuck.
Moving from the good to the bad, we start with Anthony Brown. I just don't get why Anthony Brown continues to be a thing. I don't understand why Oregon started him after he transferred there. I don't know why he bounced around the NFL for as long as he did. I don't fully comprehend why Brown was starting for Houston this weekend. I have no doubt that Brown probably has a great mind for the sport. You don't hang around as long as he has with little to no results to show without fully being able to process and understand it. Maybe he even practices extremely well, but anytime Anthony Brown is thrust into a game, the results are almost always poor, and this weekend was no exception. What else was bad from the UFL in week one? Well, it had to be the fact that expansion talk seemingly took precedent over on-field action. I just quite frankly saw so many people out there fantasy booking what the United Football League could do next as far as new teams and new markets. In many ways, it felt that the actual games were secondary. I understand this is kind of fun or whatever, but it's also stupid, like really stupid. First and foremost, the league will never expand if no one is focusing on the games, if people are not talking about what happens on UFL fields each weekend. Talk of what cities are coming next feels counterintuitive. That's because, judging by the UFL's week one, a lot of existing markets have work to do and a hefty amount of work to do to build their own fan bases up. I'll talk about this more in a minute, but looking around at some of the games in week one, why would the UFL expand when current interest is, at best, tepid in many current markets? You would be hard-pressed to say the thing the UFL is missing right now is more cities and more games. I also worry about diluting the UFL's talent pool. Spring football quality is improving. I mean, from where we were with the Alliance of American Football all the way back in 2019 to today is night and day. A lot of noticeable improvements, and those will continue. Consistency is key. Having one league and just building on what you've already laid down as a foundation is going to help the quality of play. So yeah, as much as I would love to see a UFL team in Northern California, Oakland, Sacramento, or wherever, at this point in time, it does feel like 8 is enough. Shout out Dick Van Patten. Instead of focusing on the future of the UFL, people are best served focusing on the now, because if you don't focus on the now, you're never going to get to that future and expansion, all that good stuff. Let's just be real. Neglecting the on-field product today only means those new teams you're fantasy booking won't happen because the league isn't going to make it long term. We go from the bad to the ugly, and it gets no uglier than the league's opener in Houston. The first game of the season should be this huge spectacle. Turnout should be good. There should be a lot of people in the stands. It should get everyone excited for the season. Think about what the NFL does with its Thursday night opener these days. It's almost always going to be one of the most watched games of the year. Instead, though, it felt as if no one in Houston knew the Roughnecks were playing. 9,000 or so folks showed up for Houston's home opener at Rice Stadium last year. Now, that figure was definitely generous, but the crowd made a good noise. The atmosphere was okay. It wasn't completely embarrassing by any means. This year, the announced crowd was 7,120, although it felt as if maybe 700 people were there. They had to have been counting players, coaches, operational staff, and maybe even a few imaginary friends of those in attendance to get to that 7,000 figure. There was almost no one opposite the hard cam, and even the on-camera side appeared scarce. All of this harkens back to a very common complaint you hear from fans in many UFL cities, that the league isn't doing enough local marketing, that the on-the-ground presence in existing markets is next to none. If teams are doing little to no marketing, then it's not right to expect people to turn out to their games. And let's just be honest, even nationally, the build to the 2025 campaign was uneven. It definitely felt as if it had taken a step back from how the 2024 season kicked off. Now, look, the league was dealing with some off-the-field issues that it probably didn't want to thrust into the national spotlight. But you can't grow the league if no one knows you're playing games. And on the odd chance someone does happen to tune in or just randomly stumble into any one of the UFL stadiums during the opening weekend, you sure as hell don't want them to see vast swaths of empty seats. It is, for lack of a better term, ugly. Also ugly, the final scores from this week. Look, the DC Defenders Birmingham Stallions game was somewhat close. It was the match of the round, although it felt as if the most likely outcome seemed that the game would end with an Alex Magoo sack, which it happened to end with. I don't think anyone really felt like he was leading his team to a comeback victory on this day. Also, speaking of the DC Birmingham game, sometimes I really dislike UFL scoregami. The Memphis Michigan game was kind of close, I suppose. The Showboats did have a chance to come back and tie it before a late pick six bloated the final tally. The other two matchups for opening weekend, just really ugly, uncompetitive blowouts. Look, the league cannot control which games are close or not. And I certainly don't blame the league or anyone for the lack of competitiveness during opening weekend. That's just going to happen in professional sports. But honestly, scores were pretty ugly this weekend outside of the district. Even with the ugly and bad, I still think the good outweighed everything and made the UFL's opening weekend enjoyable. The quality of play, at least from the winning team, stood out. And hey, it was also kind of refreshing to see defense played at a fairly high level. That being said, something really must be done about the UFL's attendance issues. I don't know if it's moving to smaller venues. I don't know if it's just giving out huge amounts of comped tickets, but you just can't have this. The league needs fans in the stands. This has to be a priority before the campaign ends. The huge number of empty seats at most games in the UFL outside of St. Louis is not just noticeable, but it does distract from the on-field action. It's taking away from the product you want to promote, like it or not. The sad thing is, the product is kind of worth watching. Thank you for watching this video. To learn about the history of Oakland Raiders or Las Vegas Raiders, maybe even LA Raiders dysfunction, you can check out the video in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. And for the story of the college football game that didn't exist, that would be lower left-hand corner. Until next time, I'm Cheyenne Hollis. This is The Touchback, and as always, hashtag take it out, the 25.